So basically what we've done is we've compared the 6 largest cities for walking and cycling, and I'll go through exactly what we did. But there's lots of reasons why we did that, and I sort of feel like this slide might be slightly redundant after listening to Gil talk, because he's essentially sold why we need to do these things incredibly effectively in the last 3/4 of an hour. But in New Zealand, this is a preliminary look at it because we're starting on a period of hopefully larger investment in walking and cycling in our various cities. So this is a baseline look at what's currently going on, and hopefully it will be repeated in the future and we'll see some change. What we've looked at is we've looked at what we call output benchmarks. So this is the mode share particularly, and I've given you some examples here, but this doesn't represent all of what we've looked at, because it's about a 100-page report. But with mode share, for example, we've looked at the trips by walking and cycling in each of the cities, and we've looked at it by gender, by ethnicity, by age, by socioeconomic position, because we're really interested in inequalities. We've looked at population health, so for each city we've looked at how much their citizens walk and cycle, and we've also looked at things like diabetes, hypertension, physical activity, and mental health outcomes. And we've looked at safety of walking and cycling in the cities as well, just looking at deaths at this particular point in time. And then the inputs, so the things that go into how we get these outputs. We've looked at infrastructure in all the different cities. We've looked at the policies and the funding, how much funding is allocated, the education and encouragement activities, so things like cyclovias and open streets, and the personnel working on them. Oh, sorry. We've looked at the 6 largest cities by population size, which I'm sure you'll all be fully aware of what they are. And we have used lots of different information sources, most of which are already existing. So we looked at the Household Travel Survey, the Census, the New Zealand Health Survey, climate information. We've looked at whether cycling and walking actually change depending on what the climate of your city is like. And then we surveyed the cities directly, looking at their infrastructure policies and funding. And we also talked to advocacy groups as well. Let's see if I can get this going. And I'm just going to present a few results now, not many at all, because as I say, it is quite a large report, but I just wanted to give you a little flavour of what it is that we've actually done. So this is New Zealand's long-term patterns in commuting. It's looking at walking and cycling from 1971 to 2013, sorry. And what you can see there is that walking has decreased quite substantially. This is just walking to work, by the way, not walking for all trips around the community. Cycling has been a little bit different in that it went down and then went up again in the 1980s and then started to come down again. I think that's really interesting because it tells us actually that changes in cycling can happen over quite a short period of time if people are given the right incentives. And then this is the cycling and walking by city that we put in our report. So just a quick note before you look at this is that the vertical axis is quite different for cycling and walking. Walking is obviously much more common than cycling. And the blue bars are the total number of trips walking that are taken by walking in the different cities. And the red bars are the trips to and from work that are taken by walking or cycling. So you can see that within New Zealand cities, there's actually quite a large variation in walking, which range from the lowest levels in Hamilton to the highest levels in Wellington City, where around 21% of trips to work in Wellington City are taken by walking. The cycling patterns are slightly different in that cycling is much less common on a day-to-day level for trips, but more common for cycling to work. And again, you can see that there's a huge variability by the different cities, with a low in Auckland, and the highest level of cycling to work was in Christchurch, probably unsurprisingly, and it's about 7%. And we've looked at this in the report that we've written. We've looked at this by things like gender, by ethnicity, by socioeconomic position, and by the different age groups as well. And this is just one of our slides of the health results. We looked at diabetes because there's a lot of interest at the moment in the relationship between physical activity and diabetes. And what you can see on the axis on the side closest to me is the walking and cycling trips in each city, and I've ranked them by how common it is, so the low of Hamilton up to the high of Wellington. And then the population in the blue dots is the population diagnosed with diabetes. And you can see that there's an inverse relationship. So the cities that have higher levels of cycling and walking appear to have a lower level of diabetes. And then this is just a little snippet from the survey we did of all the cities, looking at all the different types of infrastructure, asking them about all the different types of infrastructure. So what I've put on this graph is, in the blue is the percentage of streets that have on-street bicycle lanes, and you can see a picture of what it is there, basically the green paint. And then also the multiple use bicycle paths, which are in the red. And that's the percentage of streets with those particular lanes in each city. We didn't bother putting the protected bike lanes in because there were so few in New Zealand that it wasn't worth including. So what you can see there is that there doesn't really appear to be much of a relationship between how much people cycle and those particular pieces of infrastructure. And it looks the same if you use the commuting to work or the trips from the household travel survey. So I think there's some quite interesting discussions to be had about the types of infrastructure we put in and whether it's worthwhile or not. So just finishing up, as I said, this was just a small snippet of what we did. Cities matter enormously. There's a huge variation in New Zealand, which is a highly car-dominated society, even within different New Zealand cities, about the amount that we cycle and walk, about the types of infrastructure that is in, and the outcomes that we see in terms of health and safety. And as I said, this is a baseline report, and we hope that it will be repeated in the future and that we will see some changes in that. And then finally, I'd just like to finish with the acknowledgements, the large number of other people who have contributed to this work.